Turn that machine off before I do it for you, I shouted, my voice cracking through the cold morning air. The sound of metal teeth grinding against cedar posts drowned everything else out. A yellow backhoe swung its hydraulic arm again, smashing into the fence that had stood on my family's land for 50 years. The man in the HOA polo shirt didn't even flinch. He looked up from his clipboard, eyes hidden behind mirrored sunglasses, and gave me a polite smile like I was an inconvenience instead of the owner of the land he was destroying. "Morning, sir," he said, barely lifting his voice over the engine. "You might want to step back for safety reasons." "Safety?" I barked, stepping closer. "You're on my property." He gestured toward the machine, calm and smug. "Not anymore, sir. This parcel was annexed by the Community Association last year." He said it like he was reading a grocery list. "Part of the Evergreen Expansion Project." I stared at him. "Annexed? By who?" "The HOA," he said, tapping his clipboard. "It's all legal." Then, as if that wasn't enough, he smirked and added, "You can check the website for updates." My jaw clenched. The smell of diesel hung heavy in the air, mixing with the earthy scent of torn soil. "You're making a mistake," I said, my voice low but steady. "This land has never been part of your association." He gave a slow shrug, eyes already drifting back to his list. "Well, that's above my pay grade. I just follow orders." Behind him, the machine slammed down again, tearing another section of fence from the ground. Wood splintered like bone. For a second, the sound of it made my chest tighten. That fence wasn't just lumber. It was my father's hands, his sweat, his promise that this place would always be ours. I turned and started walking toward the backhoe. "Cut the engine!" I ordered the operator. The man looked down from the cab, uneasy. Before he could answer, the clipboard kid raised his voice. "Hey, step back, sir. You're trespassing on a construction zone." I spun around so fast the gravel under my slippers crunched. "Trespassing?" I repeated. "On my own land?" He didn't answer. His lips twitched, that little smirk of corporate politeness, and he just said, "Progress can't wait." For a moment, I didn't trust my own voice. I wanted to drag him through the mud and make him pick up every broken board himself. Instead, I turned away, because anger wasn't what this situation needed. I'd spent my life as an engineer. Precision, logic, patience. You don't win by shouting. You win by understanding the system better than the people abusing it. Inside the house, the smell of coffee had gone cold. I opened my filing cabinet and pulled out the manila envelope I hadn't touched in years. The deed. The county seal embossed like a scar in gold ink. My name, Raymond J. Dalton. It was more than paper. It was legacy. My father had given me those 5 acres before he died, making me promise not to sell, not to subdivide, not to let it become another patch of asphalt. I had kept that promise. Even after Sarah died, I kept it. After her funeral, I built a simple oak bench by the stream where we scattered her ashes. Every morning for 3 years, I'd walk down there, coffee in hand, sat in silence, and talked to her. That bench was our home more than the house was. And now, some HOA clerk had signed it away with a keyboard and a fake signature. The HOA office sat near the golf course, a gleaming glass box pretending to be professional. Inside, everything smelled like lemon cleaner and arrogance. The receptionist didn't look up as I approached. "I need to speak to someone about a demolition crew on my property," I said, keeping my tone calm. She sighed without interest. "Name?" "Ray Dalton." She typed lazily, frowned at her monitor, and called into the back, "Camden, it's for you." Out came the same man from the construction site. He wasn't even sweating anymore. He looked like someone who'd never missed a mirror check before leaving home. Crisp shirt, perfect hair, confidence like armor. "Mr. Dalton," he said, pretending to recognize me with a tone that could strip paint. "We've discussed this. The parcel in question was annexed under the Community Eminent Domain Clause." "Community what?" I asked. He smiled. "Eminent domain. It's in the bylaws." "Eminent domain is a government power," I said. "You're a homeowners association, not a county courthouse." He leaned on the counter, the condescension practically dripping. "We act in the interest of the greater good, Mr. Dalton." The board approved the expansion unanimously. I placed the deed in front of him, sliding it across the counter. Then, "Your board approved theft." He glanced at it once before pushing it back toward me. "You're welcome to file a formal complaint. We'll review it next quarter." "Next quarter?" I laughed under my breath. "You're bulldozing it right now." He straightened his shirt. "Sir, please lower your voice. You tore down my fence," I said. He gave me that salesman's smile again. "And we'll be putting up a better one. You'll thank us when the property values rise." Something in me went silent right then. I just gathered my papers, turned, and walked out while he was still talking. Behind me, I heard him mutter, "Old man can't let go." That phrase followed me home like a ghost. Old man, bitter. Clinging to dirt. I stood at my kitchen window that evening, staring out at the field where my father's trees used to stand. The orange light from the sunset caught on the machines parked for the night, their shadows long and ugly across the churned-up ground. The air smelled like diesel and betrayal. I didn't sleep that night. I pulled every document I owned, cross-referenced every parcel map, and drew the boundaries myself. The next morning, I drove to the county clerk's office, the kind of place where the floor creaks and the air smells like history. The clerk, an older woman with bifocals, looked up kindly. "What can I help you with?" "Land records," I said. "Parcel 7A, registered to Raymond Dalton." She brought out a heavy book of plats. I traced my finger along the old black lines, marking my property the same lines my father had stood by. Then she handed me the recent filings. A new map, 8 months old, digitally printed. The borders were redrawn, neat and sterile, and my land was simply gone, absorbed into the HOA's jurisdiction. But the more I looked, the more I saw the mistakes. The surveyor's signature too clean, the number sequence wrong. It was a forgery, clumsy but bold. My chest tightened. They hadn't just broken my fence, they'd rewritten history. That realization hit harder than anything. The physical damage was nothing compared to this. They had faked government records, twisted bureaucracy, and counted on me not knowing how to fight back. They wanted to exhaust me into silence. I folded the forged plat, slid it into my coat pocket, and thanked the clerk. As I walked out, she called after me, "Good luck, Mr. Dalton." I think she knew. At home, I laid the documents on my table, side by side truth and lie. My hands didn't tremble anymore. They were steady, surgical. I made notes, circled discrepancies, and began forming the blueprint in my head. This wasn't rage anymore. This was engineering. The next morning, the roar of engines came again, closer this time. I walked to the edge of my property. They'd cleared deeper into the woods, 50 feet gone, the stream running brown with mud. And there, half buried in the churned soil, I saw it. The remains of the oak bench, Sarah's bench, splintered, crushed, ground into the dirt. My throat closed, but no sound came out. For a long time, I just stood there while the machines idled down and the men laughed about lunch breaks. When the crew finally packed up and left, a new fence went up, chain link, barbed wire, tall and soulless. It wasn't for safety. It was a message. Stay out. You've lost. I stood there until the last truck drove off. The wind had that sharp autumn bite to it, but I barely felt it. I rested my hand on the cold metal fence, staring at the land that used to be mine. They thought they'd shut me out, but all they'd done was lock me inside with my thoughts. And that's when something inside me shifted. Not rage, not grief. Precision. I walked back inside, sat down at my desk, and opened a blank notebook. On the first line, I wrote one word: trap. Then, below it, I started listing everything I'd need: evidence, maps, signatures, witnesses. I wasn't going to fight them with emotion. I was going to dismantle them with logic. That night, I went through old folders from my Navy days, the engineering projects I'd led, the survey data I'd archived for fun. I still had the tools, the knowledge, the discipline. They thought I was just a quiet old man, but they just reminded me of something I'd forgotten. I knew how to build things, and I knew how to destroy them too. The next morning, I drove back to the county office. The same clerk greeted me with a knowing smile. Back again? I nodded. I need certified copies, every document tied to that plat. She handed them over, no questions asked. Maybe she saw something in my eyes, the calm before a storm. When I got home, I spread everything across the table. The old map, the new forgery, the deed, the photographs of the property line. I traced every inch of it until I could see the pattern blindfolded. Every single line told the same story. They didn't own an inch of what they'd taken. By sunset, I knew exactly what I was going to do. They'd build their 12 buildings, they'd hold their ribbon cutting, they'd brag about progress and profit. And when they finally thought they'd won, when every nail, every screw, every dollar was sunk into stolen ground, that's when I'd pull the lever. Because I wasn't just some quiet old man, I was an engineer. And they had just built their empire on my blueprint. The morning after I wrote "Trap" at the top of my notebook, I drove into town to meet a lawyer. His office sat above a bank, neat little brass plaque, same old smell of carpet cleaner and resignation. His name was Ellis. He had the calm, tired face of a man who'd seen too many hopeless cases and was about to file another. When I laid out the deeds and maps in front of him, he studied them with the detachment of a surgeon examining x-rays he already knew the outcome of. "You're right," he said finally, tapping the forged plat with a pen. "That's not the county surveyor's signature. Someone faked this." "So we can fix it," I said, leaning forward. He hesitated. "Mr. Dalton, fixing it and proving it are two different things. These people have resources, a legal team on retainer, friends in the planning commission. They'll bury you in motions before a judge even hears you. I have proof," he sighed. "Proof is one thing, power is another." Then, softer, almost pitying. "My advice? If they offer a settlement, take it. Walk away before they take everything else." His words hung in the air like smoke. Walk away. From my father's land. From Sarah's ashes. From everything I'd promised to protect. I folded the papers back into the envelope and left without shaking his hand. Outside, the sky looked washed out and colorless. I sat in my truck, staring through the windshield until my coffee went cold. That day, I realized something brutal. The system doesn't care about right and wrong. It only cares about who can afford to wait longer. Nights became worse after that. Sleep came in short bursts, each one ending in the same dream. I'd see the stream again, the water clear, Sarah sitting on the bench smiling. Then came the sound metal grinding, trees breaking, the ground trembling as the bulldozer crushed everything. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, her name stuck in my throat like a prayer that never made it out. The guilt was physical now, heavy as the deed in my hands. The HOA didn't stop. They doubled down. A certified letter arrived one afternoon, delivered by a courier who couldn't even meet my eyes. "Trespass warning," it read in bold. If I was seen near the construction site again, they'd have me arrested. The letter was signed by Tina Marston, vice president of the HOA board. I knew the name. Everyone in the community did. A former realtor with a personality like bleach, strong, invasive, and impossible to ignore, Tina was the kind of woman who wore sunglasses indoors and believed her clipboard gave her divine authority. She fined families for leaving their trash cans out 5 minutes late and sent written warnings for Christmas lights that didn't match the neighborhood color palette. Now she was threatening to arrest me for standing on my own soil. I laughed when I read it, but there wasn't any humor in the sound, just disbelief that people could be that arrogant. 2 days later, I saw her in person. I was getting the mail when her black SUV pulled up, polished so clean it looked like a mirror. Camden Sharp climbed out of the passenger side, still smug, holding a folder under his arm. Tina stepped out in heels that didn't belong anywhere near gravel. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Mr. Dalton," she said, walking up my driveway, like she owned it. I've received reports of you harassing our contractors. I stared at her. Harassing? Yes, she said smoothly. Aggressive behavior. Obstruction of development. I need to remind you that this area is now private community property. Your hostility isn't welcome. I wanted to laugh. Hostility? I watched your crew bulldoze my wife's memorial. She waved a manicured hand like she was brushing away a fly. We all have to make sacrifices for progress. Surely you understand. I took a step closer, enough that I could see her fake smile twitch. Progress doesn't involve fraud. Her eyes flicked to Camden, who smirked like a trained hyena. We're done here, she said, turning away. Enjoy your afternoon, Mr. Dalton. When their SUV rolled off, the gravel dust hung in the air like smoke after a battle. That was the moment I stopped being angry and started being certain. They weren't going to stop until they had rewritten the world to suit their narrative, and the only way to beat people like that was to let them keep writing until the story hung them. For a few weeks, I played my part. I withdrew. I stopped mowing the lawn. I didn't go into town. Neighbors started whispering that I'd finally given up. Some even dropped off casseroles with awkward smiles, pity in their eyes. It's a shame what they did to you, Ray, one said, not meeting my gaze. I nodded and said nothing. The more they believed I was defeated, the easier the next part would be. Then, one rainy Wednesday, I walked into a diner on Main Street just to get out of the house. The place smelled like burnt coffee and old conversations. I took a booth near the back, ordered bacon and eggs, and tried not to think. That's when a group of men in suits came in laughing too loud, their voices filling the room. Developers, you can spot them a mile away. Expensive watches, empty eyes. Evergreen Plaza's almost done, one said, pride dripping from his tone. HOA handed us that surplus land clean, saved a fortune on permits. Another laughed. Surplus land? You mean the old guy's woods? They chuckled, clinking coffee mugs. Hey, progress, right? My fork froze mid-air. They didn't even know my name, and they were bragging about paving over my life like it was a business win. That's when something inside me changed completely. The grief and anger didn't vanish, they just hardened into focus. Cold, surgical focus. I left cash on the counter and walked out into the rain. By the time I got home, the plan was already forming in my head. That night, I sat at my desk. The old deed spread under the lamplight. The paper felt fragile but alive beneath my fingertips. For months, I'd treated it like a shield. But a shield only defends. I needed a weapon. I traced the boundary lines again and again until they burned into my memory. They thought this was just an old piece of paper, a relic of a man too sentimental to move on. But this deed wasn't just proof of ownership, it was a blueprint. I needed someone who could read it like I could. Someone who knew the old ways, who still trusted compasses and field notes over computer files. There was only one man who fit that description. I picked up my phone and scrolled through numbers I hadn't dialed in years. When I saw his name, I hesitated for a second, then hit call. Eddie Lynn? A gravelly voice answered. Eddie, it's Ray Dalton. A pause, then a laugh. Well, I'll be damned. Thought you were dead or worse, retired, Happy. Neither, I said. I need a surveyor who doesn't ask too many questions. He chuckled. When do we start? Eddie showed up the next morning in a dented pickup with rusted tools rattling in the back. He was older, slower, but his eyes still had that sharp, calculating glint. Heard you got yourself a fight with an HOA, he said, unloading his gear. Those bastards think paperwork makes them gods. Not for long, I told him. For 2 days, Eddie walked the perimeter of my land with a compass, tape measure, and an old-school theodolite older than both of us. He placed discrete iron stakes at every corner, marking the true boundary line. Meanwhile, I went back to the county records office, this time armed with a clearer sense of purpose. I bought certified copies of everything, the original 1,968 plat, the HOA's forged map, even the digital GIS data the county used for zoning. By the weekend, my garage looked like a war room. Eddie tacked the original county map onto a plywood board, then laid transparent overlays on top, one for the forged boundary, one for the HOA's expansion, and another showing the planned layout of the 12 new buildings. When he lined them up, the truth became obvious. Every single structure, the yoga studio, the dentist, the vape shop, sat entirely within my original property lines. Not 1 inch belonged to them. Eddie whistled low. They didn't even check. I nodded. Arrogance always skips the math. We stood there in silence, staring at the overlapping maps, the red lines of fraud cutting through the black ink of truth. It looked almost beautiful in a way, geometry exposing corruption. Eddie looked at me and grinned. "You've got them, Ray. Dead to rights." I looked back at the maps, the proof of everything they'd done. "Not yet," I said. "Let them finish building. Let them think they've won. Every nail they drive from now on is just tightening their own noose." So I waited. I trimmed the hedges once in a while to keep up appearances. When my kids called, worried, I told them I was fine, that I was handling it. The truth was, I was building the quietest ambush in HOA history. From my kitchen window, I watched the skeletons of those commercial buildings rise, concrete poured, beams lifted, roofs nailed. Every dollar they spent was another step deeper into the hole I dug for them. A month later, I saw the banners go up. Evergreen Plaza, grand opening soon. I set my coffee down, smiled for the first time in months, and whispered to the empty room, "Good. Build it all. Make it perfect." Because when I was done, they weren't just going to lose a lawsuit. They were going to lose everything. By the time October rolled around, the Evergreen Plaza was no longer a construction site. It was a monument to arrogance. From my kitchen window, I could see the banners snapping in the wind, bold letters bragging, "Grand opening this Saturday." Every hammer strike echoed through the woods like a countdown to justice. They thought they were celebrating victory. They didn't realize they were laying the final brick in their own tomb. I'd been patient, too patient maybe. Each morning, I stood by the window with my coffee, watching concrete trucks rumble down the new paved road. The noise didn't bother me anymore. It was just the soundtrack to inevitability. Eddie had left his gear in my garage, everything labeled and logged. The overlays were pinned to the wall like evidence in a courtroom. All we had to do was wait for the right moment to spring the trap. That moment came sooner than I expected. One evening, a thick envelope appeared in my mailbox. Inside was a heavy invitation card printed in gold ink. "You are cordially invited to the grand opening gala of Evergreen Plaza." And at the bottom, scrawled in black pen, was a message. "Thought you might want to see what progress looks like. Camden." I stared at the handwriting for a long time. Not angry, not surprised, just calm. They had no idea I was already holding the detonator. Saturday arrived bright and loud. I stood at my window and watched through binoculars as the plaza filled with cars. A red ribbon stretched across the main entrance. Tina Marston stood center stage, microphone in hand, her red suit glowing like a warning flare. Camden Sharp hovered beside her, grinning for the cameras. The local news station was there too, a couple of reporters, a drone circling overhead for community coverage. Tina's voice carried over the speakers. "This project represents a new era for Evergreen," she said, smiling for the crowd. "Progress, prosperity, and unity." Her words were sugar over poison. The audience clapped politely, sipping free champagne from plastic cups. I zoomed in with the binoculars and watched her cut the ribbon with those oversized gold scissors. Flashbulbs went off. Camden raised a toast. I whispered to myself, "Smile while you can." That night, I drove into the city to meet my new lawyer, Marcus Thorne. I'd spent weeks vetting him, looking for a specific kind of predator. Not loud, not flashy, but relentless. His office was sleek, glass walls, and silence sharp enough to cut. I laid everything out on his conference table deeds, certified maps, overlays, notarized statements. He didn't interrupt once. After 10 minutes of studying the documents, he leaned back, fingers steepled under his chin. "They're not just wrong," he said finally, his voice calm. "They're fraudulent. Forging a government plat map is a felony. We can hit them with quiet title, injunction, fraud, and possibly criminal conspiracy. I'll take the case on contingency. They'll pay my fee, not you." I nodded slowly. "Good. I want them broke before they even realize they've lost." Marcus smiled a small, dangerous smile. "Then let's make them comfortable first. The higher they climb, the harder they fall." The next morning, he drafted the first letter. It was polite, surgical, and absolutely devastating. A demand for immediate cessation of operations, complete with certified copies of my deed, Eddie's overlays, and a notarized notice declaring the HOA's development as illegal trespass on private property. We sent it by certified mail. Then we waited. A week later, their reply arrived, thick, glossy paper with a law firm logo embossed in gold. Cease and desist. It accused me of harassment, of interfering with legitimate business operations. It threatened countersuits, damages, and even implied defamation. It was exactly what Marcus predicted. "They took the bait," he said over the phone, almost cheerful. "They think money equals truth." I looked out at the bustling plaza and smiled for the first time in months. "Good," I said. "Let's show them what proof looks like." Within 48 hours, Marcus filed 2 actions at the county courthouse. The first was a quiet title suit, a demand that the court officially declare me the sole legal owner of the land and erase the HOA's fraudulent claim. The second was a temporary injunction to freeze any further business, leasing, or sales activity on the property until the title issue was resolved. It wasn't just a letter anymore, it was war. The HOA was served the papers the next morning. The news spread fast. That night, the community Facebook page lit up with posts. Some people called me a hero, others called me crazy. Tina, of course, released a statement calling the lawsuit a baseless stunt by a disgruntled resident. Camden replied to comments with smug emojis. The arrogance was still there, but cracks were forming. I decided to attend their next HOA meeting. The clubhouse was packed, standing room only. When I walked in, conversations stopped. People stared like they were seeing a ghost. I took a seat in the back. On the stage, Tina stood behind the podium. Her smile stretched too tight. "We're aware of the false accusations circulating about our development," she began, her voice smooth but brittle. "Rest assured, the board acted entirely within the law." Camden stepped forward, microphone in hand. "Unfortunately, some individuals can't accept progress," he said, his eyes sweeping the room until they landed on me. "We all know who I'm talking about, a bitter old man clinging to dirt." A few weak laughs rippled through the crowd. He grinned, pleased with himself. Then Tina placed a hand on his shoulder and added, "We have made this community better. Some people can't handle success. They are the past. We are the future." She looked directly at me when she said it. For a moment, the room was silent. Then I stood up. "I buried my wife on that land," I said, my voice low but clear. "You built vape shops on her grave." The room froze. The sound of the HVAC fan filled the silence. Camden tried to chuckle, but no one joined him this time. A few people looked down. Others looked at me, then at the board. For the first time, I saw doubt in their eyes, realization, maybe guilt. Tina's smile faltered. Camden shifted his weight like a man standing on thin ice. They didn't know it yet, but the narrative they'd built was collapsing in real time. That night, I couldn't sleep, but for a different reason. For the first time in months, I felt peace. It wasn't victory, not yet, but the tide had turned. The truth was no longer mine alone. It was spreading. A week later, Marcus called. "Court date's set," he said. "Next Thursday. Be there early, and wear something that reminds them who you are." So I did. I pulled my old navy dress blues from the closet, brushed off the dust, and pressed every crease. The jacket was a little tighter now, but it still felt right, like armor that carried history. The morning of the hearing was cold and still. I rode with Marcus to the courthouse. As we pulled up, I saw a news van parked outside. Camera already rolling. "Good," Marcus murmured. They wanted publicity. Let's give them some. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with whispers. On the other side, the HOA team looked like a corporate army, polished, rehearsed, confident. Tina sat beside Camden, her posture perfect, but her hands trembling just enough to notice. Their attorney, a silver-haired man with a $2,000 pen, adjusted his tie like he was about to give a TED Talk. When the judge entered a woman named O'Connell with sharp eyes and a sharper tone, the room fell silent. She flipped through the case file, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Thorne," she said, glancing at Marcus, "your client is making a rather extraordinary claim. I assume you have more than sentiment to offer?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Yes, Your Honor. We brought the truth and a demonstration. I stood, carrying the cardboard tube we'd brought. My hands were steady. This was what all the waiting had been for." "Your Honor," I said, "may I approach the display easel?" The judge nodded. "Proceed, Mr. Dalton." I unrolled the first map, the original 1968 county plat. Thick paper, yellowed edges, truth in ink. "This is the land deeded to my father and then to me," I said, tracing the black boundary lines with a wooden pointer. 5 acres, clearly marked. Then I laid down the red overlay, the HOA's forgery. "This," I said, "is what they filed 8 months ago. The red lines didn't match the black. You could see the theft in plain sight. Gasps rippled through the room. Finally, I added the third layer, the blue one, showing the 12 buildings of Evergreen Plaza. The effect was immediate and devastating. Every building sat squarely inside the black boundary of my property. Not a foot outside. A perfect visual confession. "This," I said quietly, "is what they built. Every structure, every parking space, all on my land." The HOA's lawyer shot to his feet, sputtering. "Objection! This is a theatrical display." Judge O'Connell cut him off. "Sit down, counselor. I find this presentation exceptionally clear." She turned to Marcus. "Mr. Thorne, do you have corroboration?" Marcus handed her the affidavit from the county clerk. "Sworn testimony, Your Honor. The county confirms the original plat is valid. The annexation document bears a forged signature and invalid sequence number." The judge looked back at the maps, then at the HOA table. Her voice was calm but final. "The court finds in favor of Mr. Dalton. The Evergreen Plaza was built entirely on private property not owned or legally annexed by the community association. All operations are hereby ordered to cease immediately." The room erupted. Reporters scribbled, cameras flashed. Camden's smirk vanished. Tina's face went pale. Her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed in her chair, fainting dead away. Camden bolted toward the door, but the judge's voice cut through the chaos. "Mr. Sharp, sit down." He froze mid-step. The show was over. When I walked out of that courthouse, the sun felt warm again for the first time in a long time. Marcus handled the press, saying only, "Truth doesn't need volume, just evidence." I said nothing. I didn't need to. The map had spoken for me. Walking out of that courthouse felt like stepping into clean air after years underground. The crowd outside had gathered fast neighbors, reporters, strangers who'd followed the story online. Marcus gave a short statement to the cameras, his voice calm but sharp. Today, the court confirmed what Mr. Dalton already knew. Truth still matters. Flashbulbs went off. Microphones swung toward me, but I just looked past them at the horizon. I didn't need to speak. The verdict had already done it for me. The next morning, I printed 12 copies of the judgment order. The courthouse stamp at the bottom gleamed like a brand. Then I opened a new document on my computer and typed 3 words in bold across the top. Notice of eviction. Each notice carried the ruling's language verbatim, declaring that all structures of Evergreen Plaza sat illegally on private property and that all tenants must vacate within 30 days. No anger, no threats, just the law, finally on my side. I loaded the papers into a manila folder, got in my truck, and drove straight to the plaza. It was a bright, cloudless morning. The air smelled like asphalt and arrogance. A woman was walking out of the yoga studio, phone in hand. Two men were unloading boxes into the vape shop. None of them even looked up when I parked. I walked to the first door. The dentist office opened the glass panel and taped the notice squarely in the center. When the receptionist looked up, I nodded once. You'll want to read that. I moved from door to door. 12 businesses, 12 pieces of paper. By the time I finished, people were stepping out, reading, whispering. The color drained from faces. Phones came out, photos snapped, calls made. A man in scrubs approached me, flustered. "What is this? Some kind of prank?" "No," I said evenly. "It's the truth. You've been operating on stolen land." His eyes widened. "You're the guy who—" "Yeah," I said. "The old man." Then I got back in my truck and drove away. By sundown, the HOA's emergency meeting was in full panic mode. My phone buzzed non-stop with calls I didn't answer. I knew exactly what their next move would be: control the story. Sure enough, the next morning, a slick newsletter hit every inbox in the community. Subject line: Important update, protecting Evergreen. The message painted me as a vindictive homeowner waging a personal crusade, threatening local businesses and attempting to destroy the progress we've built together. They called me greedy, dangerous, delusional. It would have been insulting if it wasn't so predictable. Within hours, a petition popped up online: Save Evergreen Plaza from a hostile takeover. Tina's smiling face appeared in a video clip attached to the post, her voice syrupy. "We will not let one bitter man undo the hard work of this community. It might have worked if the internet still belonged to them." That evening, my daughter came by. She worked in marketing, smart and fearless, with her mother's eyes. She dropped her bag on the table and said, "They're spinning the story, Dad. You need to take it back." "I'm not joining their circus." "It's not a circus," she said. "It's communication. They're shouting lies, you whispered truth. Let people see it." 2 hours later, the camera was rolling in my living room. No fancy lighting, no music, just me in my armchair, the original deed, and the transparent overlays laid neatly on the coffee table. My daughter sat behind the camera, giving me a small nod. I started speaking. "My name is Ray Dalton. This is my land, and this is how my HOA stole it." I told it simply, no anger, no theatrics, just facts. I unfolded the maps one by one, showing the red forgery, the black original, the blue overlay of their plaza. I explained how they falsified records, how they built over my wife's memorial, how the court ruled in my favor. My voice stayed steady until I reached Sarah's name. Then I paused. They called her memory sentimental. Maybe it is, but I believe some things are worth feeling. We posted the video on YouTube that night under the title, "How My HOA Built a Mall on My Land." I expected a few dozen views, maybe some neighbors curious enough to click. By morning, it had 10,000. By that evening, 50,000. Within 3 days, 200,000. And climbing, comments poured in like a flood. Veterans, engineers, surveyors, people who'd fought their own HOAs and lost. They recognized the maps, the technical details, the precision of truth. "Competence over arrogance," one wrote. "Let them build the gallows, then spring the trap," said another. I read every comment, heart pounding, realizing what had happened. The story wasn't local anymore. It was national. People weren't just angry for me, they were angry for themselves. The HOA's carefully polished narrative shattered overnight. Local reporters who'd ignored me for months now called non-stop, asking for interviews. A regional news channel aired the video during the evening segment. Homeowner outsmarts HOA in landmark property fraud case. Tina Marston tried to recover. She went on camera, eyes red but defiant. "This is a misunderstanding," she said, blaming Camden Sharp for clerical mistakes. But the internet doesn't forget. Every lie she told was matched with screenshots of court documents I'd already posted online. Meanwhile, Evergreen Plaza began to die. The businesses panicked. Their leases signed with the HOA were now worthless. Some owners called me furious. Others sounded broken. "We just opened last month," one woman said, voice shaking. "What are we supposed to do?" I gave the same answer to everyone. "You can stay under a new lease, fair market rate, or you can leave. 30 days. Some accepted. Most didn't. Within a week, for lease signs appeared on half the storefronts. The parking lot that had been full a month ago now sat half empty, echoing with silence. The HOA's finances unraveled with frightening speed. Without rental income, they couldn't pay legal fees. Insurance carriers started asking questions about forged plats and fraudulent filings. Marcus had warned me this would happen, but even he sounded impressed when he called. "You hit them where it hurts," he said. "Not pride, cash flow." Tina's desperation leaked through the cracks. She sent community-wide emails begging for donations to save our neighborhood's integrity. Camden vanished from public view. Rumors spread the developer had pulled out. Lawsuits were piling up. Then, one afternoon, I saw moving trucks outside the plaza. The dentist left first, then the yoga studio, then the vape shop. Every departure left another echo in that empty parking lot, another reminder of how greed eats itself. But I wasn't done. Marcus filed a second lawsuit, this time targeting the board members personally, Tina Marston, Camden Sharp, and every signature on the fraudulent plat. Fraud, conspiracy, property theft. The HOA's insurer responded within 24 hours. Coverage voided due to intentional criminal conduct. That letter hit them harder than any verdict. Now, they weren't hiding behind an association, they were naked in the storm. The fallout came fast. Tina resigned live on the community Facebook page, mascara streaking down her cheeks, blaming Camden for everything. "He deceived me," she sobbed. "I was trying to protect our neighborhood." No one believed her. The comments were brutal. "Protect it? You destroyed it. You fined me for my mailbox color." The mob she'd once controlled was now turning on her. Camden didn't last long either. A week later, the county prosecutor announced formal charges: forgery, filing false public records, fraud. The police walked him out of his home in handcuffs. The photo hit the local paper the next morning. The caption read, "HOA Vice President arrested in property scheme. I clipped it and pinned it next to Sarah's photo in my study, not out of spite, out of closure." The plaza stood empty by month's end. 12 buildings, silent. I hired a fencing company to remove the ugly chain-link barrier they'd once used to keep me out. As they drove new posts into the ground for a simple split-rail fence, the sound echoed through the valley, the same crunching rhythm I'd once hated. Only now, it was beautiful. The sound of reclamation. At the lumberyard, I bought thick oak planks and spent a week in my garage sanding and staining them. The smell of sawdust filled the air. When I was done, I had built an exact replica of the bench they'd destroyed. I didn't take it to the stream yet. I wanted to finish this story properly first. Strange things began happening in the neighborhood after that. People started stopping by folks who'd once crossed the street to avoid me. Frank, from 2 houses down, showed up while I was sealing the fence posts. "You know," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "Tina fined me $300 last year because my kid's basketball hoop was 2 inches too close to the sidewalk." He laughed softly. "Guess I should have built a bench instead." Word spread. Neighbors shared their own stories, unfair fines, threats, humiliation. Turns out almost everyone had been bullied by the same board. They'd just been too scared to fight. Now, with the tyrants gone, the fear dissolved. The community that had turned silent started finding its voice again. 6 months later, Camden Sharp pled guilty to forgery to avoid a longer sentence. Tina sold her house at a loss and moved out of state. The HOA itself barely existed, drowning in lawsuits from tenants and the developer. A new board formed ordinary residents tired of fear. Their first official act was passing a new rule unanimously: no property within the association may be annexed or rezoned without the signed consent of every homeowner. They called it the Dalton Rule. One Saturday afternoon in early fall, I sent an email invitation to the whole neighborhood. Subject line: potluck. No agenda, no speeches, just food and peace. People came, dozens of them, carrying dishes, folding chairs, kids running between the tables. We held it right there on the concrete slab where the vape shop once stood. The air smelled of barbecue and redemption. Frank clapped me on the shoulder, smiling. "You know, Ray," he said, looking at the crowd, "this is the most community I've seen in this neighborhood in 20 years. I looked around, laughter, music, kids drawing chalk flowers over the faded parking lines, and I realized he was right. For the first time, Evergreen actually felt alive. That evening, when everyone had gone home, I carried the new bench down the hill to the stream. The sun was setting, the water running clear again. I set the bench in the same place as before and sat down. The wood was warm under my hands. A breeze moved through the trees, carrying the faint echo of everything I'd lost and everything I'd rebuilt. I thought of Sarah, of my father, of promises kept and fences rebuilt. They'd called me sentimental. Maybe I was. But sentiment had beaten greed. Patience had beaten arrogance. And truth, slow, steady, undeniable, had beaten power. I leaned back, listening to the sound of the stream. The land was quiet again. My land always was. Always will be. Autumn came early that year. The mornings carried that crisp scent of pine and soil that always reminded me of my father's workshop, wood shavings, oil, and effort. The plaza stood silent beyond the trees, its empty parking lot turning gold beneath the falling leaves. From my porch, I could see sunlight glint off the windows of 12 vacant buildings, monuments to arrogance slowly being reclaimed by time. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt even, balanced, like the earth had exhaled after holding its breath for too long. Marcus called one afternoon to tell me the final settlement had gone through. "The board folded," he said, voice calm but satisfied. "They've agreed to pay damages and restitution. You're officially free and clear." I thanked him, though the money didn't matter. What mattered was what the papers said: acknowledgement. They couldn't erase what they'd done, but now the record would always show who the land truly belonged to. After years of noise, I finally had quiet, the kind that doesn't demand, just exists. The first thing I did with the settlement wasn't buy anything. I built something. In the garage, I spent 3 days sanding down old oak boards until the grain gleamed like honey. Then I cut, glued, and polished until they became a frame for a single document, my father's original deed. I hung it above my desk, beside Sarah's photograph. For the first time since the bulldozers came, the house felt whole again. But quiet didn't mean isolation. Something strange had taken root in the neighborhood, something good. People began stopping by, not out of pity but respect. Frank from 2 doors down helped me rebuild the mailbox post Tina once fined him for. A young mother brought me a jar of homemade jam and told me her husband finally fought back against an unfair citation because of "What you showed us, Mr. Dalton." I didn't plan to become a symbol. I just didn't look away when they did. The new HOA board, real people, this time, not petty tyrants, invited me to the first meeting under their leadership. They wanted my input on transparency rules. I declined to join, but offered something better. I donated a portion of the settlement to establish the Homeowner Justice Fund, a small legal defense pool for anyone in the county facing harassment or fraud from an association. The idea spread faster than I expected. Within months, homeowners from nearby towns were contributing. Lawyers volunteered. For the first time, the bullies were outnumbered. Meanwhile, the county prosecutor's office finalized charges against Camden Sharp. He pled guilty to forgery and fraud, cutting a deal to avoid federal time. His name became shorthand for arrogance in the local news. Pulling a Camden, they called it, whenever someone tried to bluff their way through a lie. As for Tina Marston, she vanished quietly. Rumor had it she sold her house at a loss and moved to Florida, where people didn't know her name. Her empire built on rules and fear had evaporated overnight. I drove past the Evergreen Plaza one afternoon in early winter. The wind had stripped the trees bare, and frost painted the glass doors white. There were still traces of the old signs, faint ghosts of lettering, yoga, vape, dental. The place looked like a photograph from a different life. For a moment, I almost pitied it. the emptiness, the silence. Then I realized that emptiness was justice made visible. Not rage, not revenge, just correction. It wasn't all easy afterward. Some nights, I still woke up to the echo of those bulldozers, to Sarah's laughter carried off by the wind. Grief doesn't vanish when you win. It just learns how to sit quietly beside you. I'd pour a cup of coffee, step out onto the porch, and listen to the sound of the stream below. The water ran clear again now, the soil no longer bleeding mud. Nature heals slower than people, but it heals more, honestly. By spring, new life had begun to creep back into the woods. Young saplings pushed through the dirt where the chain-link fence once scarred the ground. Birds nested in the eaves of the old construction site. It felt poetic, the earth reclaiming what greed had tried to erase. I took my time rebuilding the bench. Each nail went in straight, every board measured perfectly. When it was done, I carried it down to the stream and set it exactly where Sarah's old one had stood. The sun was dipping low, painting the water gold. I sat down slowly, the wood creaking under me, and closed my eyes. "It's back, Sarah," I murmured. "Just like you liked it." The breeze moved through the branches, and for a moment I swore I heard her laugh again, soft, teasing, alive. Maybe it was just wind, maybe not. That evening, I started writing again. Not for court, not for defense, just for myself. I wrote about what had happened, about the cost of silence and the price of patience. About how justice isn't loud or fast, it's built like an engineer builds a bridge, one measurement, one truth at a time. The story spread online, shared by people who'd never heard of Evergreen before. Messages came in from veterans, widows, families, people saying they finally had hope to stand up to their own HOAs. I read them all, humbled. Months later, the new board invited me again, not as a member, but as a guest of honor. They'd voted to rename the park area near the stream. The sign read, "Dalton Grove dedicated to the preservation of integrity and home." I didn't make a speech. I just stood there, hand resting on the fence, looking at the sign and thinking how my father would have smiled at that. He always said, "Land doesn't lie, Ray. People do. But land remembers." That night, after everyone had gone home, I walked back to the stream one last time. The moon was bright enough to paint the water silver. I sat on the bench, the cool air wrapping around me, and thought about everything: the noise, the fight, the long road back to peace. I didn't feel old anymore. I felt finished. Not done living, but finished with the weight of proving myself. When I finally stood to leave, I looked back once more at the bench, the stream, the quiet woods that had survived greed and time. This land was more than property. It was memory carved into the soil, sealed by promise and guarded by patience. They'd thought I was a quiet old man clinging to dirt. They were wrong. I wasn't clinging. I was holding. And I always will.